بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وبعد. Last time we sat here, we talked a little bit about what intention a person should have when seeking knowledge. And we mentioned that the first intention that anyone should have is number one, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two is the removal of ignorance from oneself and from one's friends and families. And number three is when we seek knowledge, our goal should be the revival of the religion and to help the religion remain in the community, in the society, and our families first and foremost. Inshallah, today we will talk about selecting a teacher. How do you know which teacher is a good teacher? How do you know which thing should a person study first? And so يقول المؤلف رحمه الله أو قال المؤلف رحمه الله فصل في اختيار العلم والأستاذ والشريك والثبات. He mentions in this chapter on selecting a specific science. What things should you begin with when it comes to studying Islam? How should you pick a teacher? How should you pick somebody who studies with you? And how do you have steadfastness in the process of seeking religion? And so he says, ينبغي لطالب العلم أن يختار من كل علم أحسنه. That it is necessary for the student of knowledge, and we are all students of knowledge at different capacities, to select from the branches of Islam, from the sciences of Islam, the best and the most appropriate one. وَمَا يَحْتَاجُ إِلَيْهِ فِي أَمْرِ دِينِهِ فِي الْحَالِ. And he should study that which is most important to his hal, to his condition. ثُمَّ مَا يَحْتَاجُ إِلَيْهِ فِي الْمَآلِ. And then he should study that which is important to his future, whether the future in this world or the future in the akhirah. And so now he tells us which science is the most important to study first. And he says, فَيُقَدِّمُ عِلْمَ التَّوْحِيدِ وَالْمَعْرِفَةِ. That it is necessary that a person, when it comes to studying their religion, the first thing that they study is theology, or ilm al-tawheed, about the monotheism of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and knowing who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. How can we say that our purpose is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when if you ask anyone to speak about Allah, they can't even do it for 5 minutes? And so the first science that a person should study is, who is Allah? Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala one? Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserve worship alone? What are His beautiful names? How do we worship Him by His beautiful names? This is the science that should be studied first. And then he says, وَيَعْرِفُ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى بِالدَّلِيلِ. That the only way to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with proof, meaning from the Quran or from the Sunnah. You can't make up your understanding of Allah. Sometimes in this day and age, you find people that will say that my Allah is a she, na'udhu billah. Right? There are people like this that exist, but they have no proof. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is neither a male nor a female. He is above His creation. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. This is an ayah of the Quran, basic aqidah. And then he says, فَإِنَّ إِيمَانَ الْمُقَلِّدِ وَإِنْ كَانَ صَحِيحًا عِنْدَنَا لَكِنْ يَكُونُ آثِمًا بِتَرْكِ الْإِسْتِدْلَالِ. He says, for indeed the iman, meaning the faith of somebody who blindly follows somebody else, is correct. Meaning your parents, they might have told you about Islam and you have accepted it. It is correct, your iman is correct. However, you are negligible, meaning you are negligible when it comes to actually studying the religion. It's your job to figure out what is Allah, how is Allah, and where are the proofs for it? Meaning you have to study it from the Quran and Sunnah. It's the responsibility of every Muslim, not just the scholar, not just the imam. And then he says, وَيَخْتَارَ الْعَتِيقِ دُونَ الْمُحْتَثَاتِ. That a person should pick that which is atiq. Atiq over here means that which is from the tradition, that which is from the Quran and Sunnah. Don't look at other philosophies or other issues. Look at the understanding of the first generation of Islam. Because in this day and age, you'll find many different controversial theological topics. But the main topic is the topics that were discussed by them. Once you've mastered those topics, Once you've mastered the understanding of Allah, the understanding of the Anbiya, the understanding of the Quran, then go on to the new topics that people bring up and the controversies that people bring up. دون المحدثات, and keep away from the new matters. And then he says, قالوا عليكم بالعتيق وإياكم والمحدثات. Stick to the traditional issues first. Master the traditional issues. Then when you have the traditional issues of aqidah down and theology down, then go to the newer topics. Right? And then he says, وَإِيَّاكَ أَن تَشْتَغِلْ بِهَذَا الْجَدَلِ الَّذِي ظَهَرَ بَعْدَ انقراض الْأَكَابِرِ مِنَ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Stay away from the debates and the arguments of people that came after the passing away of the original scholars of the religion, meaning the Sahaba. Right? After the time of the Sahaba, there were the arguments of the Mu'tazilites and the Jahmiyyah and all of these people that if you study basic Aqidah, you'll know who they are. Their arguments are in one place and they should be studied. But that's not the main thing that you should study first. The main thing is, who is Allah? Why should I follow the Prophet? And what does the Quran and Sunnah say about my life? These are the main things that you have to understand first. And then he says, فَإِنَّهُ يُبْعِدُ الطَّالِبُ عَنِ الْفِقْهِ وَيُضِيعُ الْعُمُرِ وَيُورِثُ الْوَحْشَ وَالْعَدَاوَةِ. That the person that busies himself with the argumentative issues of his time and his age, what does that do? It weakens his understanding of the religion, it wastes his life, it wastes his time, and eventually he becomes an anomaly to people, he becomes somebody that nobody wants to stick around, and it creates animosity between people. And we find those people, whenever you find scholars that are just debating and arguing and attacking this person and that person, then stay away from that person. That's not what a scholar is supposed to do. A scholar is supposed to mention the truth and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Then he says, وَهُوَ مِنْ أَشْرَاطِ السَّاعَةِ, that it is from the signs of the end of time that people will argue about these controversial issues. وَارْتِفَاعِ الْعِلْمِ وَالْفِقْهِ, and from the signs of the end of time is that knowledge will be raised back up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كما ورد في الحديث, as is mentioned in the hadith. And then he goes on to the topic of choosing a teacher, and he says, وَأَمَّا اِخْتِيَارُ الْأُسْتَاذِ فَيَنْبَغِي أَنْ يَخْتَارَ الْأَعْلَمِ وَالْأَوْرَى وَالْأَسَنِ. That when choosing a teacher, you should pick a teacher who is the most knowledgeable first, number 2 is the most righteous, 2, and the eldest, 3. So this is the classification. If you find somebody who's the most knowledgeable but not the oldest, then still pick the most knowledgeable person. But if you had to choose somebody, if there's somebody who's knowledgeable and pious, but there's one person who's older than the other one, then choose the older one. Right? Because he has more experience, he has more wisdom, and so on and so forth. And this is extremely important. We might think, oh, okay, that makes sense. But a lot of times when it comes to us being parents, we find somebody on the internet, we find some uncle, auntie, somebody that says they can speak Arabic or that can read Quran, and we just say, go study Quran with them. Go read Arabic with them and go study. And then we come back, our kids 10 years later, they're like, we don't even like Islam anymore. Because you chose the wrong teacher. You chose somebody who was not qualified. Just like when we want to build something in our house and we want to renovate something in our house or we want to get something done in our lives, we look for the most people with the greatest credentials. We don't want somebody to come up and mess up our house. So why do we want somebody to come up and mess up our religion or the religion of our children? And this is why it's important to pick the right teacher. كما اختار أبو حنيفة رحمه الله حماد بن سليمان رحمه الله بعد التأمل والتفكر. Imam Abu Hanifa, he chose his teacher Hamad bin Sulaiman after he reflected and he thought, is Hamad going to be a good teacher for me? And he says, قال وجدته شيخا وقورا حليما صبورا وقال ثبت عند حماد بن سليمان فنميت. He said that I found my Shaykh Hamad to be waquran. I found him to be somebody that was dignified. He carried himself well amongst the people. He was haliman. He was perseverance. He was gentle in the way that he dealt with people. And he was saburan. He was patient. Sometimes we find teachers that are not patient. And they punish our children. Or they punish us. Or they scream at us. Or they don't let us make our mistakes and give us time to correct it. This is not the type of teacher that you should have. And this is why Abu Hanifa, he highlights the qualities of his teacher. And then the most important thing Abu Hanifa, he says, is that I stayed with Hamad and I grew. Meaning I became better in my knowledge. Why? Because Hamad was a good teacher. A good teacher allows a student to grow. Then he says, قال رحمه الله: سمعت حكيما من حكماء سمرقند يقول إن واحدا من طلبة العلم شاورني في طلب العلم وكان عازما على الذهاب إلى بخارى لطلب العلم. He says that I heard from one of the intellectuals or from one of the people of wisdom in Samarkand. Samarkand is in the Stan countries today. He says one of the students there consulted one of the mashayikh over there about seeking knowledge, how he should seek knowledge, where he should seek knowledge, who should he seek knowledge from. And after the consultation, he decided to go to Bukhara, which is the place where Imam Bukhari was born and the place where many scholars grew up, and he decided to go seek knowledge there. What is Abu Hanifa trying to get at over here? He's trying to tell us that when it comes to taking a teacher, make sure you ask around. Make sure you consult people. Just like, when it comes to doing something in your house or when it comes to getting a specific doctor, many of us, we do it based off of recommendation. Ask other people, consult other people. It's from the deen. And then he says, وَهَكَذَا يَنْبَغِي أَنْ يُشَاوَرَ فِي كُلِّ أَمْرٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى أَمَرَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْمَشْوَرَةِ فِي كُلِّ الْأُمُورِ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ أَحَدٌ أَفْطَنَ مِنْهُ وَمَعَ ذَلِكَ أُمِرَ بِالْمُشَاوَرَةِ وَكَانَ يُشَاوِرُ أَصْحَابَهُ فِي جَمِيعِ الْأُمُورِ حَتَّى حَوَائِجَ الْبَيْتِ. That in all of our affairs in our lives, we should always look for those people that have experience, those people that are above us, and we should always consult with them to make the best decision for ourselves. And he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even ordered the messenger of God to seek consultation. And he, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, was the most intelligent person in the room. He was the most intelligent person in the room. And yet, despite this, he was ordered to consult. He was ordered to make mashwara with his companions, and he used to even make mashwara in the simple domestic affairs of his home, meaning with his wife. Right? And this was Rasulullah. And then he says, قال علي رضي الله عنه ما هلك امرؤ عن مشورة. That no man has ever lost in life that had consultation, that asked somebody else before making a decision. You can't lose out. And then he says, وَقِيلَ النَّاسُ رَجُلٌ وَنِصْفُ رَجُلٌ وَلَا شَيْءٍ. That people are divided into three categories: a man, half a man, and nothing. So a man, half a man, and nothing. He says a man is someone مَنْ لَهُ رَأْيٌ صَائِبٌ وَيُشَاوِرٌ. Someone who has sound judgment and he makes consultation. Right? And then he says half a man is someone who has sound judgment but he doesn't make consultation. Or he makes consultation but he doesn't have sound judgment, meaning he's missing something. And then somebody that's nothing, he's the person that neither consults nor does he have his own sound judgment. And that's pretty much a loser. That's what he's trying to say. So for us as Muslims to be the most complete Muslim, to make the best decisions in our lives, we use our sound intellect, we use research, we use whatever we need to understand, and then we also ask people that are more experienced. This is how learning works in every field. And then he says, قال جعفر الصادق لسليمان الثوري, and inshallah we're almost done. He says, شاور في أمرك الذين يخشون الله تعالى وطلب العلم من أعلى الأمور وأصعبها فكانت المشورة فيه أهم وأوجب. He says that Ja'far al-Sadiq, he said to Sufyan al-Thawri, one of the scholars of the past, that consult with people in your affairs and consult with specifically those that fear Allah. Because if they fear Allah, they're not going to give you bad advice. They're going to make sure that they look out for your best interest. And then he said that seeking knowledge is the greatest of all affairs and the most difficult. So you definitely have to seek advice when doing it. And he says, قال الحكيم رحمه الله, that one of the scholars of the past, he said, إذا ذهبت إلى بخارى فلا تعجل في الاختلاف إلى الأئمة وامكث شهرين حتى تتأمل وتختار أستاذا فإنك إذا ذهبت عالما وبدأت بالسبق عنده ربما لا يعجبك درسه. That Hakim, he said that when you go to Bukhara, when you go to the city of Imam Bukhari, don't rush to go find any teacher and just go study and sit with him. Right? Don't rush to just find any imam and be like, I'm going to study with him. But stay there for 2 months, وَامْكُشْ شَهْرَيْنِ, and think and reflect and see and observe, and then pick a teacher. Because if you pick a teacher and you pick a scholar and you go to him and you rush towards him, you might find that his way of teaching or his way of instruction doesn't appeal to you. You're not learning, you're not benefiting. You can have the most knowledgeable person in the world, but if he doesn't know how to teach you, you're going to learn nothing. And then he said, فَتَتْرُكُهُ وَتَذْهَبْ إِلَىٰ آخَرٍ. Eventually you're going to leave him and you're going to go study with someone else. And I'm somebody that's experienced that. You find teachers in Medina that are not actually for your level. You need somebody that can teach you better. And so you end up going to somebody else. فَلَا يُبَارَكُ لَكَ فِي التَّعَلُّمِ. And because of this shifting back and forth and not actually reflecting on who you should learn from, you lose out on the barakah of time. You lose out on the barakah of knowledge. And then he says, فَتَأَمَّلْ شَهْرَيْنِ فِي اِخْتِيَارِ الْأُسْتَاذِ. Reflect for 2 months. Figure out who the best teacher is. Do your research. وَشَاوِرْ حَتَّى لَا تَحْتَاجْ إِلَى تَرْكِهِ وَالْإِعْرَاضِ عَنْهُ. So that you don't have to leave him or you don't have to turn away from him. So make sure that you consult people. And then he says, فَتَثْبُتْ عِنْدَهُ حَتَّى يَكُونَ تَعَلُّمُكْ مُبَارَكًا. Then when you finally pick a teacher, your knowledge and your seeking will be blessed. Allah will put barakah in it. وَتَنْتَفِعُ بِعِلْمِكَ كَثِيرًا. And you will benefit a lot from that person's knowledge. And this is where he stops when talking about knowledge. The next section he talks about patience when it comes to seeking knowledge, patience when it comes to dealing with students, patience when it comes to dealing with a teacher as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this sitting a means of barakah for us and a means of reward for us. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.